Hello, amazing tall poppy woman, and this Q&A this week is all around how to survive Christmas. We now officially have less than 1 month to go until Christmas is upon us. In fact, this time in a month's time we'll be celebrating Boxing Day, so it's kind of crazy how quickly all these things run past, and 2018 is almost over. Now, for some of us, it would have been an amazing year of change, challenges, and those moments where we just want to sit in a corner and cry. But the most important thing is, how do we get and make sure you've got the right tools, and how do I share these with you so that I know that you're going to be in the best possible position to get through Christmas in one piece, and more importantly, out the other side of Christmas feeling even stronger, more confident, and having a better relationship with your family, your friends, your ex, and most importantly, if you have kids, making sure that they have had the Christmas that they want, and importantly, the one that you want to provide for them. So we've got 4 parts to cover today. The first part is focusing on you. The second part is focusing on dealing with your family and your ex and your kids. The third part is what not to do. And the fourth part is going to be focused around a checklist of practical things that you can start to do and start to prepare even from today to make sure that Christmas can be survived, and that you don't just survive it, but you thrive during it. So let's get stuck into part 1. And if you've got any questions as I go, please make sure that you put them into the comments. And if you're watching this video after the live, again, pop them into the comments, and I will do my best to make sure that they get answered either in a follow-up video or in the comments section below. So let's get started. So part 1 is all about you, and I really vividly remember my first Christmas after being separated and divorced. It was actually exacerbated personally by the fact that my mother passed away 2 days before that next Christmas, and it was incredibly difficult, and I turned personally to family and to friends in helping me get through that in the strongest way possible. But the things that I think is really important to recognize when it comes to Christmas, it's a bit like having a microscope put on your life. It is this moment in time where we have to put this happy face on and be joyous, and it's just this sense of pressure, and particularly when we're not in that headspace of being happy and joyful, it really can be incredibly challenging. We can feel incredibly judged at that point in time. But for me, that first Christmas, and I really hope for you, whether it's your first or second or fifth Christmas after separation or divorce, is that it is a time for personal reflection. It is a time for gratitude for what the year has given you. And it's also a time to genuinely reflect on the things that you've learnt, the things that you want to change in your life going forward, and we'll no doubt talk about New Year's resolutions soon. But there's no hiding from the fact that, in particular, that first Christmas post-separation for many of us is going to be the hardest. The good news is that it does get easier as every year passes on. But we have to create new traditions. We have to create a new sense of what Christmas means to us, particularly if we've been in long-term relationships. I was in a 9-year relationship, and I was used to cooking the big family Christmas and having everyone come over to the house, and love being that hostess with the mostess, I guess is the way to put it. But I didn't get to do that. I was in a state of grief for my relationship. I was in a state of even more grief for the loss of my mother, and it was one of those times where it was absolutely a moment of reflection, and I had to let it be okay that I wasn't going to be this happy, joyous, jolly Dominique. It was actually going to be a time for me to take it slow, a time for me to give to myself, and a time for me to just realize that it's not about saying that the cards that I've been dealt are unfair. It was very much a time for me to decide how those cards that I had in my hand, how was I going to best deal with them, and to tackle them one at a time rather than feeling completely overwhelmed and in a state of just anxiety and not being able to move forward. And the most important thing that I realized going through that is that Christmas is, at that point in time, was for me. It was about, how do I make this Christmas for me something that's going to rejuvenate me, something that when I go back to work in January, I'm actually going to be in a position to be refreshed. And the only way to genuinely do that is to unpack all the stuff that's happened during the year and to define what you want to throw out, define what you want to get rid of, and actually repack up and rebuild yourself. And I think Christmas is one of those most beautiful times of year where, for me, as being someone who's self-employed, and at the time I was actually employed, the not having those phone calls from clients, and it was really just a time to focus on who I wanted to spend my time with, and what genuinely added value. But it was also a time to start breaking the comfort zone. So Christmas for me had always been really set. This is what we do at Christmas. This is what happens. But in reality, it's time for us to kind of go, well, that's no longer the reality. That's no longer the cards in my hand. And it's time to break that comfort zone and start to do things that are outside of the comfort zone. And most importantly, get out there. Friends will be brilliant at inviting you to things, and just say yes. Get out of the house. Don't be a recluse at Christmas. Get out of the house. Be surrounded by people that love you and care for you. So any Christmas invitations, just say yes. Just go and make a fabulous excuse to get dressed up and feel good about yourself. But also, it was a time for me, and hopefully for you, where you can say Christmas is for me because I'm going to find the time to celebrate in my newfound freedom, to celebrate in my newfound singledom. And understanding that that is incredibly important. And Christmas, as I said, is one of those unique times of year where you do get that headspace to actually put work on pause for most of us, and we get to genuinely reflect. It is also incredibly important to not surround yourself by the memories of the past. So I wasn't in the previous marital home. I wasn't surrounded by memories of what that last Christmas was. And I think it's really, really important to make sure that you do the same thing. Don't be sitting there in the marital family home. And I know for many of you, you are still in that house. But find ways to decorate it differently or do things differently. Some traditions you want to hold on to, but sometimes you just need to start afresh. And I've seen some of you where you've had the ex come around and put lights on the roof, but did that really need to happen this year? It might have happened every year for the last 5 to 10 years, but did it really need to happen this year? And did we really need the ex to come around and actually put the lights on? So really start to think about memories of the past, putting those to one side and starting to create new memories for you. I often talk about, and if you've listened to some of the other units, you would have heard me talk about reclaiming the space, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a cinema, whether it's a shopping centre, whether it's the beach. This is about you reclaiming Christmas for you. Simple as that. And we also have to recognise that if we've just been through divorce and separation, it is going to be challenging. And most importantly, there are lots of changes, and it is what it is. But you're going to get through it just as I got through it, just as so many of the other hundreds of women in this group are getting through it together. And I think that's the important thing about being part of the Tall Poppy Woman group, is that we can all experience and be supportive of each other in what can be really, really difficult times, but we have to keep that positive focus. And as I said before, it is so incredibly important to have the attitude for you, as we kind of conclude this part one, that you cannot change the cards that you have been dealt, but you can change how you deal with them. And I think that is such a really clear and important message, whether you write that down, whether you do something else, but make sure that you think about that when it comes to Christmas. So part 2 is dealing with family, and most importantly, dealing with children. My key message here, if you have kids, is focus on surrounding your children with the people that they love and allowing them to do the things that you know are going to bring them joy. And have that as your core and your central focus. It isn't about what your ex is doing or who they're out with or what you're doing is none of your ex's business at the same time. The bottom line, though, is if you have kids, your focus should be mutually on them as co-parents. And this should be the one time of year where you can actually take some incredibly positive steps and not be the mumzilla and not react to the dadzilla, and actually take positive steps to help create a new level, a new platform of communication between you and your ex. And that's really the way I want you to see Christmas. Christmas is one of those things where you and your ex have to communicate, whether it's a grump or whether it's a big long conversation. But it's a really good opportunity for you to talk about what are the boundaries for children, what are the expectations for the next year, how are you going to behave in each other's presence at family events, how do you keep focus on the thing that both of you love, which is your children. So the first thing that I want you to think about is, well, what are the boundaries that you need to set? And if you have kids, those boundaries are going to have to be set with your ex first, and then a conversation should be had with your kids. It's about making sure, it's not about ripping everything away and saying the kids don't get the Christmas that they did last year, but it's also having a really honest conversation with your children and saying things are going to be different this year. And I think the thing that is a really, really beautiful message, and particularly when you're struggling, is to keep this in the back of your mind, which is your heart may be broken by whatever has led to the separation that you're currently sitting in. However, it is your children's love that is going to help that be healed. So providing them the love, providing them the support is going to enable them to give you the love that you need to heal and heal faster. And if you keep that as your central focus at Christmas time, then you can kind of deal with a lot of the other crap that your ex might be throwing at you. And they might not be. They might be sitting there trying to work with you, and you might have boundaries and walls up that are just saying no to everything that they're suggesting. But this is the one time where you can change your behavior and how you've done things in the past, and so can they. So setting expectations, setting boundaries, but being really honest around things are actually going to be different this year. And also, when we're setting boundaries, looking at things like, well, what are the gifts that the kids actually want? And having a conversation with your ex around what gifts each of you are going to buy for your children. It isn't a case of one-upmanship, who can afford the most. It is genuinely a case of knowing that you're not both going to buy the same thing. Bit of a disaster. But secondly, if that was to happen, or one parent buys an incredibly extravagant gift and the other parent doesn't for whatever reason, it could be affordability, it could be anything, but you cannot buy children's love. But what you can do together as a co-parent is to provide a place of safety for children. And by you opening up channels of communication with your ex, and as I say, Christmas is a brilliant time to reset the boundaries around this. It is also a time of year to decide what traditions are actually going to be important for you and the family going forward. And if your kids are old enough, I would include them in those things. And it's also about creating new traditions, a new sense of adventure. And children are incredibly resilient. And I think as parents, it's far too easy to try to, a bit like a spoiled cake, and you're trying to put icing over it so it's nice and smooth. But reality is it's a bit of a mess underneath. Kids know exactly what's going on, as much as you like to think that they don't. And often they're not saying things and you're thinking, well, they're not saying it, therefore they're not thinking it. The reality is that they probably are, and they're acutely aware. So it's about being really open and honest in your conversations. And if you're able to do that with your ex, brilliant. But if you're not, it's about you standing proud and being really proud of your behavior. But a new sense of adventure. And for most of us, we're pretty cash strapped in that first Christmas. We're paying legal fees. We perhaps haven't had the financial settlement come through yet. So think about ideas and creating new traditions of making gifts with your kids to give to people, or making the Christmas cards that get sent out to people, and make it more personal. It's also really important not only to set boundaries, but to create habits of gratitude through the Christmas season. And be really, really grateful and having those conversations. Obviously, we've got Thursday Thanks, but this is something that you can do as a family unit. With your children, asking them what they're thankful for that they actually now have today that perhaps they didn't have a year ago. What are the things that make it different for them, but what are their positive focuses? And having a little thing, maybe it's on the fridge, you just say, write down one thing that you're grateful for today on the blackboard. Also, you sharing what you're grateful for. And if you can get your ex involved in that process, it just creates a bit more of a positive framework. And I've definitely seen that work. In fact, I've seen it work time and time again, where even if the ex texts that through, this is what I'm grateful for with the children, or this is what I'm grateful for with you, it helps to create that communication. You can do the same thing back to them. It isn't about getting back together, but it's creating a different way of communicating. And again, as I said, at Christmas time, it's a time where you can open up that kindness and open up your heart a little bit, even though no doubt it's been very, very battered and bruised. But having that regular sense of gratitude between you and your ex, from your children and you to your children, and internally within yourself on a daily basis through that Christmas season, just enables that forward and that positive focus. And we also need to think about the carve up, and I call it the carve up because it is as brutal as what it sounds. It's about where are the kids spending their time, who's doing what, and the last thing you want is for that to be ordered by the courts. And if you're in that situation, I would do everything that you could for that to avoid being the case. Splitting of Christmas Day can be a nightmare. The kids are packing, there's presents everywhere. Again, it's a nightmare. It might be your only option, and I get that. But if there's any way to set a new precedent for you and your ex to be in the same room, to set a new precedent so the kids still get to play with their cousins, to set a new precedent as to how you're going to behave with your ex going forward, Christmas is absolutely the time of year to do it. And it's about reducing your stress, and it's about showing up as the person that you want to be. You might not be quite there yet, and there's probably still things you need to work on, but it's about setting a new precedence as to how you want to actually go forward in the communications with your ex. But coming back to the basics, focus on surrounding your children with the people that they love on Christmas Day. And if that remains your focus, and if that is your ex's core focus as well, and you can both agree to that, then it is going to be far easier for you to find an amicable way to jointly do Christmas events. And if you can't, that's fine, but perhaps that's something that you can work to over a number of years. And you don't have to do joint Christmas events. Sometimes it's just an impossibility. But when you're keeping that as your focus, and if your kids are old enough, as I said, make sure you include them in the decisions around what's important to them at Christmas time. Make sure that you're communicating with them about what they should expect at Christmas. You don't want them not knowing that they're leaving at 1 o'clock and dinner's at one place and breakfast is at another place. Give them a really clear indication. Give them a timetable of where they're spending their time. It's also really important to not leave your children empty-handed. And I do see this happen time and time again, where you're responsible essentially for helping your kids buy the present to give to their dad, and to give, if their dad now has a new partner, to basically this new woman that's in your ex-partner's life, and to the grandparents on that side, or sisters and aunts and all of those other things. You might feel a huge amount of resentment but you need to think about the embarrassment that you're going to cause your children if they turn up empty-handed. Even if it's going to the dollar shop, or even if it's going and making something for those people, it is still really important to give your children that sense of pride that they have something to give. And most importantly, teaching your children about the gift of giving, and the joy that they can actually get from giving something. We all know that in many cases we give things, or Christmas, I know I'm like this, I give Christmas presents not to receive a Christmas present back, but for the joy that that person gives to me, because they love the present. It can be tiny, it can be big, it can be handmade, it can be whatever it is, but there is joy in that. And I think it's also about being the bigger person and about changing perceptions, particularly if you have been particularly negative about a new partner, or particularly negative about your ex-mother-in-law. It's about changing perceptions about the person that you are and the person that you want to show up as. So never ever leave your kids empty-handed when it comes to presents. The other thing that's really important, if you are going to have joint events with your ex, agree to a safe word that the other adults actually know about. That way, if you start to bicker, if you start to criticize each other, if you start to behave in a way that could damage your children, that you can call each other out on it, but most importantly, the other adults in the room can call you out on it. It can be, I don't know, what rhinoceros or whatever it happens to be, but something that the kids aren't necessarily going to understand, but know that there is a word where you can both be held to account. And I think that's incredibly, incredibly important. And if you do have the children for all of Christmas, making sure that you give your children the time to spend on Skype or FaceTime or on the phone with the ex. I think that's incredibly important. Now, there are some exes who just simply are not going to be involved. My father never sent me Christmas cards. I never got anything from him. But I think in hindsight, there is something damaging about that. And I think it's incredibly important that you do what you can, that even if there is an absentee parent, that you at least get them to send a Christmas card, that you force that issue as much as you possibly can. Or even if you get the grandparent on that side to send a Christmas card that they've all signed off on. Little things like that can just help make children feel safe. But I guess concluding part 2, it's about setting boundaries. It's about having open conversations with your kids. It's about constant showing of gratitude within your family unit, and including your ex within that family unit, making sure your kids never show up empty-handed, even if it means buying presents for people that you just simply despise and dislike. We all get past that. And show up as the person that you want to be. Show up as someone that your children will be proud of in 10 or 15 or 20 years when they look back. I think that's incredibly important. So what are the don'ts? Don't buy love, and I've already spoken about that. Don't spend what you cannot afford, and particularly important for this very, very first Christmas. The first Christmas is, you're probably more cash strapped than you've ever been. Don't spend what you cannot afford. Don't pick up fighting with your ex as soon as they walk in the room. Have those safe words, have those conversations. Christmas is not a time for fighting. It is a time to reset your communication with your ex. So if your communication is down here with your ex, if you follow some of the things that I've spoken about, setting new boundaries, buying presents, making presents, whatever it may be, but behaving in a better way, behaving and enabling better communication going into the next year. And that's really what your goal should be with your ex. Don't bring anger to the table. Genuinely don't bring anger to the table. And again, making sure there's other adults in the room who can call you out on that, whether that's your own mother or your own sister calling you out. And even if your ex isn't in the room, making sure that they have the ability to call you out. It's a really saddened time, often that very first Christmas, but this should be about celebration. It should be about the kids if they're in the room. But also don't compromise yourself beyond your own personal boundaries and beyond your own personal worth. As much as I'm saying don't do a lot of things, it is also important to hold your own integrity and make sure that you are doing things that you can stand up and be proud of in the future. And most importantly, what your ex is doing at Christmas, who they're spending their time with, is not your business. The same as what you're doing at Christmas, unless it involves the children, what you're doing at Christmas and how you're spending your time is not their business. And I think that is such an important message. We can dwell, we can imagine, and what we imagine just isn't factual, and we can send ourselves down this huge spiral, particularly at Christmas time, of the what ifs, all these Christmas traditions gone, all of these things, but just don't. And if you feel that coming up for you, that's what the group is here for. I'll be on the group over Christmas. And if you're feeling really stuck, obviously let us know and let me know. Make sure if you're genuinely struggling that you seek professional help and get even more pointers and guidance leading into the Christmas period. But most importantly, when you are sharing, make sure that you're sharing from that place of I'm here to learn, and I want other people to benefit from this as well. So what is the checklist that you need to focus on when it comes to making sure that you can survive Christmas? So your Christmas survival checklist. Number 1, play the hand that you have been dealt. Do not wish for a different hand. Life is exactly where it's meant to be. It might not be what you'd planned for. No one ever plans for separation and divorce, but it is where you stand at the moment. So let go of what's gone. Just let go of it. There's nothing you can do about it. And I think one of the most frustrating things that I see is where people cling on to the past or hold on to things that, or the what ifs or what could have been. But the reality is that it's not there. And we can only worry about the things that we can control. And if we start to worry about things we can't control, then we don't have the headspace to actually look after the things we can, which enable us to move forward as individuals and as people. So play the hand you are dealt and be really clever and smart and emotionally centered with how you deal with that hand. Write a list of all of your traditions that you've had in your family and break that list into 3. The things that are must, the things that are so important to you that you want to make sure that those traditions continue. It might be something that your grandmother did, a grandmother's recipe for Christmas pudding. But what are the crucial traditions that you absolutely have to hold on to? And what are the nice traditions and what are the traditions that you can let go of? But in my opinion, the ones that are in the nice category probably also belong in the ones you can let go of. Pick your battles. Genuinely pick your battles. This is Christmas and it is a time for having things that are genuinely meaningful in Christmas. Not a list of these are all the things or particular Christmas decorations on a tree and those. Is that genuinely going to make a difference to you and to how your children experience Christmas? So what are the crucials? Fight for those, absolutely, but don't just fight. Give reasons as to why that particular thing is important to the person that you're having that conversation with. Telling people, I want this, without the why means nothing. 3, look to the new. And we can always build meaning from what can seem like a complete wreckage and just ash everywhere. Look to the new. Look at new things that you can add into Christmas, whether it's we decide that we're going to stay in our pajamas till 1 o'clock on Christmas Day and we're going to watch movies and we've got particular movies we're going to watch, or we're going to go out to the beach and we're going to enjoy it, or you're going to go out with friends and have a champagne breakfast somewhere. This is your chance to create the new. Respect your feelings. This is number 4. And when I say respect your feelings, this is a recognition that there will be moments of sadness on Christmas Day. And that is actually completely okay. But reframe, bring your emotional pendulum back to center, and remember what you are there to focus on. You are there because Christmas is there for you. And if you have kids, Christmas is there for you. And you have a responsibility to surround your children with those that they love. Force yourself out is number 5. Make sure that you say yes to the invitations. Make sure that you aren't sitting surrounded by the memories of your past Christmas. Make it new. Make sure that you are out, you are doing new things, and you are trying new things. Even if that means just going down to the beach with a cup of coffee and enjoying the waves. It can be as simple as that. But do try to surround yourself with people that you love and people that love you. Number 6, set the frame. Set the frame with your ex, set the frame with your family, set the frame with your children. Make sure that people have the right expectations for Christmas. And make sure, most importantly, that there's no discomfort and unsafety being created by uncertainty, particularly when it comes to your kids. Number 7, create a list of people that you intend to give gifts to, and also a list of items, and also the kids need to give gifts to, and also a list of items of events that you need to attend, particularly if it's with your ex, with kids. And sit down and have the conversation with your ex about who's responsible for buying the teacher the gift, who's responsible for buying this grandparent a gift versus that grandparent a gift. Make sure you have your children's bases covered, as I've said a number of times. Never leave them turning up empty-handed if that's going to cause them embarrassment. If you're single, I would really, really, really encourage you, if you don't have kids, to simply say no presents. Sorry guys, sorry friends, I'm not spending money on presents this year. It has been a really expensive year and really, really tumultuous, and I need to spend that money on me, and I think that is absolutely fine. I did that second year, and honestly, it was just such a relief not to have to buy presents for people, not to have to buy presents for little things. The time that I saved alone was phenomenal. But also just being able to say, well, actually that $1,000 or that $500 or that $200 that I would have spent on presents, I can now go get myself a massage, or I can do a weekend escape somewhere. Just think about that when you're thinking about gifts. Do you really need to give and take? Or can, if it is just between adults, perhaps just make the decision that this year you're not going to do it and instead spend it on you. Number 8 is look after your health. Christmas, we tend to eat a lot of food, we drink a lot of alcohol. Make sure you move. Make sure you're getting up and exercising. Make sure you're doing things for yourself. And be conscious about what you're eating. There's nothing worse than overeating and then feeling really bad about how you look and how you feel, and then you just spiral through. Number 9 is surround yourself with friends and be the person that shows up for your friends. Don't be the person that trains your friends. Be the person that helps uplift them and helps them have an amazing Christmas. And as number 10, I believe it's so important that whether you're a mum or whether you're not, buy something for yourself. Do something for yourself at Christmas time. And the last one, number 11, is make sure that your behaviour at Christmas makes you proud. And hold yourself to a standard that you know that in 5 years' time you will look back on and go, I was really proud of what I did. I'm really proud of how my children got to experience this Christmas. I'm really proud that my steps with my ex has enabled better communication between us because of that Christmas. And I'm really proud that I looked after myself in that first, second or third Christmas. Christmas is as much about you reflecting and resetting as anything else. To conclude, the main things are be really, really conscious at Christmas time as to where your focus is. Is it forward or is it backwards looking? Focus forward. And Christmas right now for you is an opportunity to make your own version of Christmas, to make your own life and to make your own decisions around it. So relish in that, enjoy that. And most importantly, know that you've got an amazing supportive network around you. But you've got this. You will survive Christmas. In fact, you will thrive during Christmas. It's not about survival, it's about thriving. I'll speak to you guys later.